Hi, this section is on inks and pigments, but it's not the section on which inks to use and the ingredients that are in the inks and how they work in different ways in order for us to do a good job. This section is purely about the chemicals that go into the inks and the health and safety aspect of them. So this forms to a small degree part of the licensing and registration section of our training program. So having said that, let's just go through the slides that we have. Okay, so pigments and inks are made up of various chemicals. There is no way other than to mix ingredients together in order to get a pigment or ink. And the main difference between pigments and inks is that pigments, when they are deposited in the skin, are semi-permanent and will eventually, because they are organic, they will be absorbed into the body and disappear over a period of time. Whereas tattoo inks are made up of materials which are not organic, and the way they're laid in the skin, they remain there permanently. So there's quite a difference between the two products. So in permanent makeup, I would strongly suggest you always use pigments, and in tattooing, obviously, you would always use ink. Okay, so that being said, the products that are on the market in the form of pigments and inks are made up of various chemicals. So what are your responsibilities as an artist and your responsibility to the customer as a whole? So the first thing is you should always buy a product that's fit for the job that it's going to be used in. So any chemical that you use, you should use it within the guidelines that the chemical manufacturer made that chemical. And the same with pigments and ink. So that's the first thing. And in various countries around the world, there are some regulations and some standards. Now, these standards are not enforced, but they are more like guidelines, and so we're going to just run through those guidelines with you. And as a moral, upstanding person that cares about their customer, you're going to adhere to these standards, aren't you? Okay, so the most important thing that we're trying to do with these standards is not have any hazardous or dangerous chemicals inside the pigments. We're going to put the pigment into the person's skin, so it would be morally wrong of us to put a known dangerous chemical, something that is carcinogenic, for example, could cause the customer to have cancer in the long term. It would be completely wrong of us to add that into their skin. Okay, so the most important thing is that you should, when buying a pigment or ink, you should buy it from a reputable company, and you should ask the company before buying the ink if you could have a certificate of analysis. Okay, so this is a chemical data sheet, and it says what's in the product, and it tells you if it has any hazards, is it dangerous, what precautions you should have, and if someone has an allergic reaction, what is the course of action that the person should take. So this piece of paper is quite important, and you should keep this on file, and you should have it easily accessible. So in the event of a person having an allergic reaction to your pigment or ink, you could lay your hands on this document fairly smartly. So in a lot of countries around the world, it is a requirement that you have a folder with the chemical data sheets of all the chemicals that you use in your studio, and that these are freely available to either your staff members or a member of the public, should they ask you what is in any of your materials that you use. Okay, so you should have these chemical data sheets and you should have them handy in a file. So that's pretty much your responsibility as far as these are concerned. Other people who are responsible are the suppliers. So the supplier of your pigment or ink or any other chemical that you use in the tattoo or microblading or permanent makeup industry, the supplier has a responsibility to supply good quality products that are free from any toxins that could be dangerous for the customer. Okay, so this is what they look like. Okay, these are material safety data sheets for the BioTouch range of pigments that we recommend for someone starting out doing permanent makeup and microblading. So we provide these chemical data sheets for all the pigments that we provide on our course. If you then go on and buy other makes and other suppliers products, then you should ask for these documents. But we've made sure that you have them, and it's up to you to print them out and then to have them handy for a file. So if you are doing licensing and registration, you're in a city or an area where licensing and and registration is a legal requirement, then you would need to have these on hand prior to your inspection with the health department. Okay, so you can go through and see that it has the common name of it. It has a particular chemical number. It has the ingredients. It sort of basically describes what it is. It has its physical characteristics. All of these are pretty standard sorts of things, nothing to worry about. It tells you a little bit about its hazards, which are pretty much nothing. And you'll see that there are some health hazards down at the bottom. So it says what happens if you get the product in the person's eye. Okay, so if you're doing permanent makeup, eyeliner for example, or you're doing eyebrows and you get the product in the person's eye itself, what do? So it says flush the eye with plenty of water, and if there's an irritation, then get medical advice. Remember always, we are not doctors, so if any medical advice is required, you can't give it, so you need to tell your customer to seek medical advice. Always remember that. You are not a doctor, you are not qualified to give medical advice. You can make recommendations for aftercare and that kind of thing. That is acceptable, but should the person have any type of reaction, if she gets an infection or some sort of allergy, you are not competent to provide medical advice, so you must recommend that they seek medical advice. However, these pigments are pretty safe, and we have done many thousands of procedures in a safe manner, so you should be fine. All right, so also now what we have is we have some lists added here, which you can see on the screen behind me, and these are chemicals which should not be in your pigments, and if they are, they need to be in very small doses. So hopefully because you're buying your product from a reputable seller, you're going to, when you look at your chemical data sheet, you're not going to see any of these products in your pigment or ink. If you do, then you shouldn't be using them, or you need to ask them why they're selling a product that has these dangerous chemicals, and perhaps they'll come back and say, well, the level in them is so insignificantly small, it is not a problem. Okay, so but you shouldn't find any of these at all. Okay, coloring agents, obviously the colors are quite important, but certain colors shouldn't be inside of your pigments. So these ones that are on here, these are pigments that you shouldn't have. So you can see they've got their common number on there. So when you're looking at your pigments and you see the color number, you should be able to just run down this list and just make sure that the pigment is not on the list. There's nothing wrong with pigments that are on this list. They're obviously perfectly fine if you're a painter or you're dyeing clothes or any other, you're painting a wall in the house or so on. But obviously if you're going to be injecting the pigment directly into the skin, you don't want to have a green made from poison ivy, for example. Okay, and so reds that come from like tomato, for example. So these types of poisons are not good for injecting into the skin. Okay, so you have these lists. And you should never have to even consult them, because I'm sure you all will be upstanding people and buy from a reputable supplier, and you will ask the person for the chemical data sheet, and by buying known brands, there's pretty small chance that any of these chemicals will be in them. Okay, so these are maximum concentration. So we all know what arsenic is. Arsenic is a poison, and if you give people arsenic over a period of time, you can kill them. And you can see that less than 2 parts per million of arsenic can be found in tattoo ink, and the person won't die. So there's a whole bunch of others, and probably one that jumps out at me as a body piercer is you'll see nickel. Okay, and because nickel is inside stainless steel, that is why nearly every single person on the planet is allergic to stainless steel. So we have a medical grade stainless steel in body piercing, which is less than 12% nickel, and then that is acceptable to 90% of people who have a body piercing, but it is still cause quite a lot of allergic reaction. So you'll see the nickel as low as technically possible, it says on your chart. Okay, so that's quite important to know, but again, you shouldn't find any nickel. You must see zinc right down at the bottom. Now, some years ago, around the world, we all got excited in the tattoo industry, and we were tattooing black light tattoos, so a tattoo that's completely invisible in the skin, but if a person goes into a nightclub under black light, it would shine. So, but because the use of zinc inside things like sunblock, for example, so you go see a surfer, he goes to the beach and he puts this Lumo pink stuff, or Lumo pink, Lumo green stuff on his nose so he doesn't get burnt in the sun, and these creams are all zinc based. Okay, so if you've done that and then gone to a nightclub, you'll notice that your skin, even though you've wiped the stuff off, is like luminous. Okay, so everybody knew that zinc is really, really good for ultraviolet light and having fun. So tattoo artists, being irresponsible back in the day, made up tattoo inks that had zinc in it. And any person that had a tattoo with zinc would be then scratching for the next 20 years because they would be allergic to the zinc. So you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, so so all around the world it went around and everybody said you can't do black light tattoos because they are dangerous. But there are other products, and we can do safe black light tattoos today, but not using zinc because it's on the banned list that you can see behind me, and so you shouldn't have any zinc or tin, or there's quite a few metals inside. One of the metals that you may find that is inside all your pigments is titanium. Titanium oxide is the only pigment which we use for white, and so any white pigment or ink is made of titanium metal. and you'll see by having a look through these lists that titanium is not on there. And obviously it's not on there because if you were to have a medical procedure where you needed to have some metal pins or some sort of work done on your skeleton, doctors would use titanium implants. Okay, and if titanium was bad for us and dangerous, then doctors wouldn't put titanium in your spine or any other place that you might need some sort of work. Okay, so titanium oxide, which is in all white pigments, is completely safe. Okay, it is a metal, and if you go for an MRI, it could cause you some trauma, but generally white pigments is completely safe. Okay, cool. So there are a couple of other bits and pieces that you can see on the slide behind me. Don't worry about those. And definitely anything that is not within these ranges of chemicals definitely shouldn't be on there. So if you find some sort of pigment or something that's on the list that is in your end product, which is not on this list, then these ranges of the 6s and the 8s and the 9s, then you shouldn't have them in at all. Okay, so what do you need to do? Okay, so to summarize, you need to buy from a reliable supplier. You need to ask your supplier for a material safety data sheet. If they can't supply one, you don't buy it. And if they have one that they send you, then you're going to print that out, put that in your material data safety sheet with all the chemicals that you have. So if you buy any sorts of skin sterilizing products and so on, ask for the material data sheet and put it in your file so that if you get licensing and registration, that you can show the health and safety officer who comes to do the inspection your chemical data sheets. Okay, and those should be kept handy so that the customer or any of your staff can see them in an emergency situation where you've had an exposure and you've got the product in the person's eye, for example, or for some strange reason their child's drunk a bottle of your pigment, then you need to be able to get your hands on this data straight away. Okay, that's pretty much it. Nice and simple, and I hope you didn't find it too boring, but it is a very, very important part of our business to understand the chemicals that we use and any dangers related to them. Cheers.